Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 20th of February. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Residents in many parts of the country woke up to heavy snow this morning that pretty much closed down many communities, schools, and most workplaces. The main roads into the capital were sealed last night until a few hours ago when they were reopened to traffic. Some 25 centimeters of snow fell here in Jerusalem and more than 30 in the Golan Heights. And it wasn't only the mountainous regions that saw the white stuff. It also fell in many areas where it's considered to be a rather unusual sight, such as the University of Haifa and the adjoining Carmel region, Kiryat Shmona, and the Hula Valley. Down south, there was also snowfall in Beersheba, as well as smaller towns in the Negev. And meanwhile, Tel Aviv and the central region didn't miss out on the wintry weather, but instead experienced a downpour of hail. Due to widespread preparations and warnings for the public to stay off the roads, damage usually associated with the harsh weather was kept to a minimum. Now joining me by telephone to discuss the storm is Oren Davidoff of the Israel Meteorological Service. Hi, Oren.
Hi, good evening.
So tell me, is the worst over?
You could say pretty much. There's a little, another second small wave, so to speak, of incoming rain and a little bit of possibility for a little bit of snow leftovers, so to speak, even up north as we speak, and even in the center, also Jerusalem, but we're talking mostly of insignificant amounts. Probably anywhere between a few centimeters, and that's it, pretty much. I mean, we're talking anywhere between a centimeter to 5 centimeters tops, and that's going to be all the way throughout the night, even possibly tomorrow morning, with a possibility of even some light snow down south in the northern Negev mountain regions over there. But that's you could say, pretty much we're over with the worst of it.
Let's talk about places like Emek Hula. How infrequent is it for the snow to fall in some of these kinds of areas?
It's pretty infrequent. The values of temperatures that we've seen throughout the atmospheric levels in this particular weather system that came in it's not very rare, but it's you could say fairly rare. It comes every once in a couple of years, once in a few years. Temperatures that are cold enough to bring snow to places that are usually unheard of, and so it's relatively unique. And places that you've reported before, Ayelet HaShachar and places like that, were really a little bit unexpected. I mean, they were expected because some of the forecasts that we gave out the past few days did say snow in unreasonable areas, so to speak. So we did predict some of those areas, and it was fairly rare, so to speak.
I just have time for one last very quick question, which I consider show-stopping for those of us who've had enough of this winter season. Is this going to be the last major storm?
Never say never. I mean, we're already almost through February, the end, and coming up with March around the corner, and we're looking into spring already. But March and even April and May can bring a little bit of more rain for sure. There are a lot of more rain systems coming up. But as far as snow, we might not have heard the last of it, but hopefully, or for those who aren't enjoying the snow, it might be one of the last storms at this magnitude, at least. But then again, I said never say never. We can always expect the unexpected. So we might have another one around
politics. You're very diplomatic. But very good to have you with us.
Part of my training as a forecaster here.
Yeah, so you don't get blamed. But Oren Davidoff, as always, from the Israel Meteorological Service, thanks so much for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Turning now to politics, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could be facing the most serious legal challenge in years. Police Inspector General Yochanan Danino is hinting that the disgruntled former chief overseer of the Prime Minister's residence, Meni Naftali, may be granted immunity in exchange for testimony regarding 2 cases of alleged criminal wrongdoing at the residence. Detectives of the police Lahav 433 unit questioned Naftali for several hours last night about funds received from recycled bottles, as well as the patio furniture that was purchased for Netanyahu's private residence that was paid for by the state. According to Danino, it was agreed that any kind of information provided by Naftali will not be used against him. After the conclusion of his cooperation, police will transfer the transcripts to Attorney General Yehuda Weinstein. The granting of immunity to Naftali is expected to have a major impact, as his testimony is expected to play a critical part of Weinstein's decision whether or not to pursue criminal charges over the claims, which were earlier criticized in a report from State Comptroller Yosef Shapira. Security for Habayit Yehudi chairman Naftali Bennett is being bolstered following threats to his life and repeated provocations by leftist critics at events in which he participates. Bennett will be accompanied by extra bodyguards, and the peripheral security details surrounding him will also be strengthened. In one of the latest incidents, a brawl broke out at the Haifa Convention Center on Wednesday night after a group of LGBT activists burst into a Beit Yehudi conference taking place. The activists say that Beit Yehudi supporters were to blame for the violent overreactions after one of the groups raised the LGBT flag. Bennett sharply rebuked the left wing and is also accusing the media of enabling the hatred. An indictment has been filed in the Tel Aviv District Court against Hamza Matrouk, who is the alleged Palestinian terrorist who carried out a mass stabbing attack on a Dan bus in Tel Aviv last month that injured 17 people. According to prosecutors, the 23-year-old suspect from the West Bank city of Tulkarem wanted to kill as many Israelis as possible in retribution for last summer's conflict with Gaza. Matrouk is being charged with attempted murder, criminal sabotage, and illegal residence in the country. He is expected to remain in custody during the legal proceedings against him. Eyewitnesses say that after boarding the bus during morning rush hour on January 21st, Matrouk immediately stabbed bus driver Herzl Biton, who managed to fight his assailant and open the doors of the vehicle so that the passengers could escape. After exiting the bus himself, the terrorist continued to attack passers-by on the street before he was shot and arrested by officers from the Israel Prison Service who happened to be nearby and pursued him. The negligence trial has opened over the accidental 2012 death of Second Lieutenant Hila Betzaleli when a massive lighting rig collapsed on her during rehearsals for the annual Independence Day ceremony on Mount Herzl. 5 members of the Itzuv Bama Lighting Company have been charged with varying degrees of criminal negligence and criminally negligent homicide. The victim's 74-year-old grandfather committed suicide last year after reportedly battling depression over her death. Staying with legal matters, and the Haifa District Court has convicted both the mayor of Upper Nazareth, Shimon Gapso, and his former top deputy, Adi Barko, on fraud charges for threatening a member of the city council after the 2008 elections that if he didn't resign, his wife would lose her job with the municipality. The councilman refused, and the officials made good on their threat to fire his wife. In his ruling, the judge found that the actions amounted to bribery. U.S. President Barack Obama is prepared to make Tehran a strategic partner of Washington's as part of his administration's realignment in the Middle East. This according to the director of the Besa Institute for Strategic Studies, Professor Ephraim Inbar, who also told IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan that Obama didn't want Prime Minister Netanyahu to address Congress about Iran because it could spoil his foreign policy tactics.
The United States wants to retrench, as we all know. President Obama is not interested in a high-profile American presence in the Middle East. And according to this view, the only serious strategic player in the Middle East is Iran, because Sunni states are basically in much trouble, and they offer to him the vision of turning Iran into a strategic partner.
Professor, do you think that Prime Minister Netanyahu should go to Washington and address the Congress?
I think the reason why Obama is against Netanyahu's address is because he doesn't want a challenge to his policy primarily on the nuclear agreement planned with Iran. Obviously, the view coming from Jerusalem about the kind of role Tehran can play in the Middle East is very different from the vision that is offered by this type of belt insiders.
What's the danger of that for Israel?
I think that it's quite clear that Iran is not going to play the role of a strategic partner. Iran has its own vision that it wants to acquire hegemony in the Middle East. We see actually great advances on part of Iran in recent months. We've seen Tehran taking over Yemen. We've seen helping them stabilize to some extent the regime of Assad. We know about the relations, the deepening relations between Lebanon and Iran. And we know that Iraq, the government in Baghdad, that is a Shiite government, is basically a satellite of Tehran.
Perhaps Netanyahu is being given more credibility than he deserves, that he can change U.S. policy. Is he being caught up in some kind of bipartisan issue in America?
Well, it may have this type of implication, but I think that on this issue, on Iran, Netanyahu is very passionate, has been known to advocate a very strong position in Iran for many years. And I wouldn't connect it directly to the domestic politics in the United States or in Israel.
It's been about 35 years since the Iranian Revolution. Could Obama be the first U.S. president to visit Tehran?
If there is an agreement, why not? Don't forget that Obama is the one that wants a reset with the Muslim world. Mm-hmm. And what could be better than after going to Istanbul, going to Cairo, he goes also to Tehran?
Recent terror attacks by Islamist extremists in Europe have increased calls for government leaders to do something to counter the increasing threat. IBA's Ellie Wogelenter asked Professor Gerald Steinberg of the NGO Monitor whether Europe is getting the message.
For so many years, the European leaders have ignored the obvious connection between the anti-Israel propaganda, the demonization, and anti-Semitism, attacks against Jews, the combination now of people coming back from Syria, from Iraq, with the Islamic State propaganda and the terrible violence that they are basically exposed to and participate in there. And Europe's ignored this for 20 years, the combination of these things. And now we're seeing the results of that. This is not going to disappear overnight at all. And yes, the European leaders, French president, the Danish prime minister, many others have made very good speeches. Around the synagogue in Oslo, Norway, now there's going to be a group of Muslims forming a human chain. Those are good symbolic acts, but they're not nearly a replacement for dealing with the substance. Europe needs to wake up also in the sense of stopping what is really vicious anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, it's all the same propaganda that they themselves are paying for. When the Danish prime minister condemns anti-Semitic attacks that killed a Jewish member of the community who was standing guard outside the synagogue, saving the lives of many people there, but doesn't even realize that her government is paying for something called a Human Rights Secretariat that operates out of Beerstate University. The Danes, the Dutch, the Swiss, and the Swedes are putting in millions of euros and pounds and dollars every year into daily propaganda that has all these blood libels about Israeli war crimes and Israeli violations of international law. There's a direct connection to that. That's got to stop. And so more than words are absolutely required now.
So when Prime Minister Netanyahu said that the attacks on Jews in Europe will continue, he was right.
I don't think anybody can deny that the infrastructure is there, and that's part of the hatred that's been taught for so many years. How the Jewish community deals with that is something they're going to have to decide, but the Zionist answer has always been, whether it was Herzl or Ben-Gurion or Begin or Netanyahu, this is your homeland. That is Zionism. They can choose to accept that or make their own decisions, but that's part of the package.
The politicians in Europe, though, are also dealing with another issue, the Muslim population. On the one hand, they ask Jews, please stay. On the other hand, they have to get reelected, and they have to cater to the population that will elect them. The Muslim numbers are much greater than the Jewish numbers. How do you square that circle?
It's going to be very difficult, as in all these kinds of cases, but there's also a big backlash against extreme jihadist, violent Islamic, the teachings, the activities. They're going to have to get more involved in this. They're going to have to roll up their sleeves. The concept, the European concept of soft power and norms, we're going to show by example, morality, principles. We don't have to use force. We don't have to use pressure. That's over. That may have been good for Europe in the post-war era, in the post-Cold War era, for its native population. But when you got so much hostility and friction, in some countries you got 10, 15, 20% of a population that's not just not integrated, but extremely hostile to the overall existing groups, whether it's in France or in Brussels or in other places like that. They've avoided it. Politically correct behavior has led them to avoid dealing with this in a substantive way. The concept of integration and multiculturalism, those all sound good on paper. Clearly they haven't worked. And if Europe's going to survive, it's going to have to start dealing with this in terms of substance and not just in terms of slogans.
But that attitude of Europe has been going on since World War II. Can we really expect, just because we see videos of beheadings and burning people, that that's going to change their attitude?
It's not only burnings and beheadings. When you've got the Islamic State sitting off the coast of Italy, in Libya, easily able to go into Europe from there, when you've got these attacks in Paris and in Copenhagen, and it could happen in any other European city at any time, a killing of people, not just Jews, but also people who are fighting for free speech and have the temerity to criticize Islamic radical behavior. They're going to have to deal with that in different ways. It's not something that what was there before cannot determine their behavior if they're going to survive. And every group of people, every nation, every culture needs to find ways to survive. So they're going to have to engage in this. It's not going to be trivial at all for them. It's going to be a long struggle.
The Tower of David Museum has gone digital. Using smartphones and tablets, visitors are now being offered cutting-edge technology to experience thousands of years of history. IBA's Aria O'Sullivan went to the ancient site in Jerusalem's Old City and brings us this story.
Limestone walls of the Citadel, traditionally the general headquarters and site of palaces in Jerusalem. Known today as the Tower of David, for over 25 years it's been a museum telling the story of this ancient city. Its stones have seen Hashmoneans and King Herod, Crusader kings and Ottoman rulers. If only stones could talk. Well, now they can, in a way. To reach a new generation of visitors, the museum has turned digital, using iPads, smartphones, and tablets to augment the history at their fingertips and keep the kids busy. Traditionally, a visitor to the Tower of David Museum would come to the roof of this tower and look out at this beautiful panorama and would wonder what these buildings are. They would look at this map here and see Dome of the Rock or the Hebrew University. But now, this is being augmented with high technology. Tell us about this.
Everything that an audio guide can give you. So we give you with pictures of the building now. You see it from more closer. You see the building in the last century, how it was in the Mandat area, in the Turks area. You get more explanation, you see videos.
The technology Augmenti guide was developed for use in the Israeli army.
The tablet automatically identifies each building here in the view. And you can actually push the building and get the story of the building with audio-visual effects, with pictures, with everything.
Don't worry if you don't have a tablet. The museum will lend you one for just 15 shekels.
The museum has to stay relevant in the digital age. They cannot stay something passive. They have to bring new stuff in order to enhance the experience today. This is the new language of today.
Families can also download a game where they have to help an archaeologist find his lost daughter using clues in the displays.
It's a custom-made game. You cannot play it in any other place in the universe. You must come here because part of the game is augmented reality-based. So you have to use this iPad then you can get here to find those special clues inside the walls or inside the zones. And also you must find some of the clues inside the rooms.
3D outdoor screens help recreate how the grounds around the Tower of David looked like thousands of years ago.
It's very difficult to imagine when you stand here what this place used to look like 2,000 years ago. And this is basically what it does with 3D screening, and you can just see the pillars coming up and exactly the whole surrounding of this place.
The Tower of David Museum is the first in the digital sphere, and it's clear this pioneering success is bringing the old stones to life. Aria O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Definitely worth a visit. In other news, the U.S. Noble Energy Company has announced that it will not further invest in offshore natural gas operations with Israel until a regulatory dispute is settled regarding the Leviathan and the Tamar fields in the eastern Mediterranean. The firm's representative said, however, that Noble is intent on completing an offshore compression project in Ashdod in the first half of this year. Company officials also stress that they are committed to finding a solution that is agreeable to all parties to allow for the development of Israeli natural gas reserves. The announcements come after Israel decided to restructure the private ownership of Tamar and Leviathan, its two biggest natural gas fields. The move would see new regulations put in place that would break what Israel's antitrust authority has deemed to be a monopoly. According to the general plan, the state will regulate prices on natural gas until the ownership restructuring is complete, followed by a cap on sales prices for the next 5 years. And in local finance, the shekel today put in a mixed performance in foreign currency trading. And due to the closure of the stock market on Fridays, here's a look at the closing numbers for the week. Here now is the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'll be back at this desk tomorrow to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. Hope to see you then. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a warm and cozy evening and Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem.